Welcome back to the Mea Culpa show. I'm here today with Harry Dunn, my good friend Harry. There's so much that's going on. There's so much anxiety out there, angst. And I've seen that you've been on television quite a lot, obviously, because of January 6th. So I want to start by asking you this question. As we just now passed the 4-year anniversary of January 6th, how has your perspective on the events of that day evolved? Does the passage of time, did it bring you any healing, or does it deepen the wounds?
Yeah, Mike, good to be with you, buddy. Sure, anytime time, they say, heals all wounds, I think I don't necessarily agree with it. It heals them. Accountability would have healed the wound, I guess, in this instance. But my perspective on the day hasn't changed at all. It was one of the worst days of my life, one of the worst days in American history. Um, my perspective, the change in perspective has been of the American people who just didn't seem to care enough to not disqualify this person, Donald Trump, for his actions on January 6th at the ballot box, man. Like that's the part that my perspective has changed. I had a little more faith in the American people. The institutions failed us, courts suck, the rule of law, justice, like they get that wrong often. Well, I won't say often, but
I
time.
would.
Yeah, yeah. Well, fair enough, fair enough. But I try to have a little more faith in that, but they fail us. But I thought the institution of a democratic process of voting would the American people's voices would be heard, and the majority of people that decided to sit out this election, that's the part that messed me up, man. It was, yeah.
7 million plus fewer voters this election cycle than in the last.
Shit, I
And
thought it
I'm
was
with
more
you
than
on
that,
that.
dude. I thought it was more than that. I thought it was like 20 million, but yeah,
Well, 20
but
million
anybody,
Americans didn't vote, but
yeah,
7 million fewer than last election. You're always going to have people that, for whatever the reason, they just choose not to vote. They don't want to be a part of the process. They want to bitch and complain about it. But I believe, if I'm not mistaken, it was like 7 million fewer votes. I'm kind of happy to hear, the last time you and I actually saw each other was over at the DNC convention. And, we talked about this. We talked about whether or not time has helped you heal the wounds of January 6th, of that infamous day. And I compared it to the 6 years that I have been now living under this sort of umbrella of confusion as it related to both my sentencing, the unconstitutional remand, the ongoing and continuous attacks on me by mostly MAGA individuals, though there are still a few Democrats that I've got some issues with. I'm impressed to hear that you're in a better path to healing than I am.
yeah. No, man. It's important. I was down, bro. I was after that election. It was rough, man. Like I put so much effort into stopping him and helping Kamala get elected. Like the football analogy, leave it all on the field, and I did, and I just lost so much faith in the American people. I was down, bro, but I didn't stay there. Like, and I think that's one thing that going to therapy has helped me with. It's like don't stay down. Feel down, get down, but I like to be solutions oriented. I don't like to just be mad about shit and not do anything about it. Like, let's do something about it. So I think that helps me to stay motivated and keep in this fight, even though I don't know what the hell the fight looks like. I know I'm gonna be fighting, but I don't know in what capacity. But
Yeah.
I'm up for it though.
So I have to ask you this because, a lot of people say to me, oh, after the election, Michael, you sound very different than you did during the campaigning, where you were much more harsh to Trump and so on. Well, that's true during campaigns. You put it all out there onto the field, but I try to live in the world called reality. And the reality is on January 20th of 2025, Trump will be placing his hand on the Bible and he will be sworn in as the 47th president of the United States. Now, there are, and I've always maintained this, certain policies that I absolutely agree with Trump on. I believe that, as an example, let's see, I believe that our country has to have a better immigration policy. I believe that, we should not have open borders, which for the last 50 years has been a problem in this country. I don't like some of the methodology they intend to use. But one thing that I am absolutely opposed to, I'm actually insulted about it. And I'm insulted about it in a large part because of the relationship that I've built with you over the many years now. When I heard that my former boss, that Donald J. Trump, the next president of the United States, pledges to pardon all of those incarcerated or charged for their roles in that insurrection. I want to ask you, I'm infuriated about it. How does that affect your view of justice and accountability in America?
Well, it tracks for Donald Trump. It tracks for him. He doesn't believe in accountability for himself or people like that are loyal to him or are willing to commit acts of violence in his name. I mean, think about this for a second. I've seen numerous reports. I know because I'm still going to court cases. I mean, on Friday, I'll be going to court with Sergeant Gunnell, one of the other brave police officers from January 6th. He's testifying about an individual that assaulted him. Those are the people that are in jail, man. Like, the people that are in jail are the people that committed the most violent acts of violence towards police officers. They're not 80-year-old grandmas aren't in jail for trespassing in the Capitol. They paid a fine or they got probation. Those aren't the people that are sitting in jail. The people that are in jail are the ones that attacked officers. And the fact that he's saying that he's going to issue pardons and he's calling it the day of love and it was peaceful. It shows one of two things. He's either delirious and out of touch, or he has no clue what's going on. Like he's lying about what happened. I'm saying it's the latter. He's lying about what happened. He saw what was going on. He saw people. I think in one of his interviews, he said that the people that assaulted officers didn't have a choice. I think he said that in one of the interviews with Kristen Welker. Like, give me a break, dude. It's an insulting thing. The problem, but, and you know this, Mike, the problem is we expect this from Donald Trump. Like, that's kind of like going into like a forest and you get bitten by a snake and now you're mad at the snake. No, the snakes bite. Like, that's what they do. I'm mad at the people that supported him, that are backing him with all of this. Like, Donald Trump is who he says who he is. Like, this isn't a surprise. You know this. You know that better than anybody. If he says he's going to do it, he's going to do it. So I think it's important. I'm mad at the people that aren't taking him at his word.
Well, I'll tell you who I'm angry with. I'm angry with both parties. And I'm going to tell you why. I'm angry at those members of Congress whom you protected, who've shifted their rhetoric or continue to talk as if they were Donald Trump and downplaying the January 6th insurrection. And I'm going to say it. I'm not going to call it, a day of love. The reason that Donald Trump, he's not lying, by the way. And my listeners may say, what, Michael, shut up. What are you talking about? He's not wrong when he says that it was a day of love. It was a day of love for him, not for the country, certainly not for you and police officers, not for America's democratic republic or our Constitution. It was a day of love for him. All you need to do is take a look at any single clip, and what will you notice? You'll notice a plethora of those red hats, Make America Great Again hats. You will also see a multitude of Trump flags, of MAGA flags, Trump 2020 flags. That was there for him. That was a day of love for him. But the question that I want to ask you, how does it make you feel after you risked your life to defend them, this group of members of Congress, Republican members of Congress, who are now attempting to whitewash the reality and have now shifted their rhetoric and downplay the January 6th actions?
Yeah, so not being a Capitol Police officer anymore, I can express my disdain for them and all of this. As I was an officer for 3 years after the attack, and where I had to be, courteous and respectful to them as individuals. Even though in my mind I had my personal views, I thought they were, full of shit. They were a bunch of crap. But when I was an officer, I still do. I still believe in the institutions, and I believe they're worth protecting and defending, which is one of the reasons why I campaigned so hard to keep Donald out. He doesn't respect the institutions. He doesn't revere democracy. He doesn't respect it. But those individuals, the Marjorie Taylor Greens and the Andrew Clydes, and even Mitch McConnell to that point, where him went groveling back to Donald Trump.
Well, that's who I'm referring to.
That's
who I'm referring to. After he condoned it.
Yeah, those individuals. I mean, they are who they are. Like, it goes back to what I said about I don't expect any from them. However, they represent a seat that makes up this democratic republic that you just said, that it's important that we protect them to have. There were, like, thinking about at the Capitol when I worked there were times where the fucking KKK came up there and they expressed their First Amendment right. I don't agree with that. Matter of fact, I downright loathe and hate them. But the right, I will defend. They have that right to do so. So I take it personally. I'm not going to compromise with Donald Trump. Like, people have tried to say, all right, let's see where issues we can work together. No, never. It's personal, and it's personal with those members that attacked, that went to verbally attack and defend Donald Trump, and attack what we went through. I won't forgive them on a personal level. It's personal. So, but they have the right to do that, and I won't lose the sight of them not having the right to be able to do that. Like, I believe in that free speech stuff. It has limits, but it also has consequences too. And I'll campaign as hard as I can for any and everybody that's opposing them, because I don't believe there's any place for those type of people in Congress.
See, I'm blown away, because what bothers me the most is, Donald has some terrible, terrible impulses. He really, truly does. But at the end of the day, if there was somebody, just one fucking person around him, to turn around and to say to him, stop this shit, stop it now. All right? I'm bringing my fucking video camera, pick up your phone, make it a video, and say, tell these people to stop it and go home. There was nobody there that had the balls to turn around and to say it to him. On top of that, as we move now into the inauguration date, there's not a person around him to turn around and to say to him, knock the shit off about the pardoning of the January 6th insurrectionists. Stop calling him or them hostages and patriots. They are not. All right. Now, I know he needs their votes, and he believes that in part, and he's not wrong, that his success in this election was in part due to this group of MAGA maniacs. But at the end of the day, this country, we are desperate within which to heal. And there's no way to heal this country when you reflect back upon the vision of people smashing windows, American citizens smashing windows, defecating on the floors and smearing feces on statues and art in the rotunda of the Capitol. This is just bullshit. These people built a fucking gallows to hang Mike Pence. They were looking for Nancy Pelosi. This is not normal behavior. We haven't seen this for, what is it, like 130 years in this country where we had an attack on our Capitol. And I'm with you on that. I don't forgive these members of Congress for what they're doing. And my belief is that if enough of them would have had balls to turn around, or the gumption to turn around and to say him, stop that shit or we just can't support you, he would have stopped it. You know?
No, I agree 100%. But they didn't. So many people, like, I mean, just look at the people, because obviously if you don't do it, it's political suicide, right? Like Adam Kinzinger, Liz Cheney.
Well, Liz
like,
Cheney, sure.
Yeah, so many people. Mitt Romney, like, sure, he called out Donald Trump in a lot of times, but look, I mean, he's retired. He's no longer in Congress anymore. I mean, in the Senate anymore. The people that are willing to stand up to him and say no, they don't exist anymore. And that just goes to the spinelessness that a lot of these people have, and not representing. I don't believe they're representing their constituent. Now, let's be clear. There are a lot of deep districts where those constituents want nothing more than to support Donald Trump. I mean, even like Matt Gaetz and Marjorie Taylor Greene, they're doing exactly what their constituents want. But there are a lot of people that I don't believe that want Donald Trump's rhetoric. I mean, look at some of these tight races that happened in New York, where they're MAGA world, but you got districts that Donald Trump lost or Kamala Harris won, but elected a Republican representative. I think Mike Lawler is one up in New York. Kamala Harris won that district, but he's a Republican, but he's towing the line with Donald Trump. These representatives have to do a better job of representing what the people want, and it's not this divisive. I wouldn't say divisive. It's not this lying shit about forgiving rioters and people that attacked and beat police officers. Like you said, the border needs attention. Sure, let's fix that. But let's not without all the racist rhetoric and all the mass hysteria that they create about somebody of a different skin color being an illegal alien just because they're of a different descent. Like that's just racist and stereotypical, and it's what fuels MAGA's flames, man.
Well, how do you deal with the issue that people who you would expect to be pro-police, pro-law, members of police forces, members of the military, they themselves have reframed January 6th as a day of patriotism, that the actions taken that day were patriotic in nature. How the hell does anybody, right? I truly don't understand it. As a fellow police officer, how could they possibly look at you, hear your story, see what transpired on that disgraceful day, and call that day a day of patriotism and accept Trump's rhetoric? I don't get it.
Well, it's crazy because, I mean, that goes to the larger picture that a lot of people have been fighting, marginalized groups of people have been fighting for a long time, calling for police reform. If you have people that are okay with what happened on January 6th that are police officers, then that's the problem that exists within policing that a lot of people talk about when they talk about police brutality, when they talk about profiling. Those are the people that they are talking about, and not Republicans, but disillusioned MAGA extremists that happen to work on police forces. How can you be objective? How can you be fair to citizens on the street when you can't even support the Capitol Police and the Metropolitan Police officers
Right.
when we're out here telling our stories? So that's the problem.
They're not even protecting their own. My understanding, right, is that all police officers are part of a brotherhood. All military service members are part of
Yeah,
a brotherhood, right? I mean,
bro,
they're not even protecting themselves.
you won't believe how many messages I got on Twitter when I first testified. People calling me a punk and a coward and a disgrace to the badge that were officers. They were current law enforcement. I'm a cop and so and so. I'm a cop and so and so. You should be ashamed of yourself. You're a little punk. You wouldn't last a day on the streets in my jurisdiction or all this stuff. I got tons of messages from cops, and I'm just like, this is crazy. But like, I know me, and I ain't worried about none of that. Like, but it's insane, man. Like that goes to the deeper problem when people say, "How do you fix police reform?" It's about the people that you have in it, man. It's about the people that you have. Policing, I think, as an institution, it's necessary. It's needed, and there are majority great officers there. But when you have people that are still policing that are okay with January 6th, that's problematic.
Yeah, you think that's problematic? I'll go one step even further here. When I first asked you about, now that we're passing the 4-year anniversary of January 6th, the biggest problem for me is that with time, sacrifices of officers like yours, like Brian Sicknick, they seem to be fading from public consciousness. That's upsetting to me. What do you want people to remember about their heroism?
Well, one of the things, and I'm glad that you brought up Brian Sicknick, man, and the other officers, the 4 other officers that died via suicide. Um, I think it's important that what's in the news now is the Jack Smith report and Merrick Garland mulling over the decision to release the report or not. And I wrote a letter to Merrick Garland, and I think it's important that it gets released on under no circumstances. Under no circumstance that it does not get released. You have to release this report because so many Americans are forgetting what happened that day, or not forgetting, or remembering a different narrative because of the MAGA people trying to rewrite what happened that day. So I think it's important that people like myself, people like Michael Fanone, the Adam Kinzinger, Jamie Raskins, they continue to be out there and tell the story and push back against the narrative. So many Republicans have said that they want to move on from January 6th. You're right. Let's move on from it. However, we're not going to move on while y'all are still lying about it. We're going to set the record straight and then we'll move on. And I think that comes with the report that comes out. Like I fought for accountability. I believe in not moving on for accountability, but it seems like we're not going to get that with the election, with the courts and all the cases being thrown out. But I think it's important that we keep on pushing back, being truth tellers about what happened that day and not being silent. Too many people have been silent, and that's what lets the bad guys win.
See, for me, like I get your point. I really do, in terms of accountability and the January 6th report being released. I see it unfortunately different than you do. I'm seeing it from the perspective that what you do today opens up a Pandora's box for tomorrow. I found a tool that gives me insights to create a healthy metabolism for my body. And it's managed to improve other aspects of my life as well. And it's called Lumen. So what's Lumen? Lumen is the world's first handheld metabolic coach. It's a device that measures your metabolism through your breath. And on the app, it lets you know if you're burning fat or carbs and it'll give you a tailored guidance to improve your nutrition, your workouts, your sleep, and even stress management. So look, here's how Lumen works. All you have to do is breathe into your Lumen first thing in the morning, and you'll know what's going on with your metabolism, whether you're burning mostly fats or carbs. Then, Lumen gives you a personalized nutrition plan for that day based on your measurements. And you can also breathe into it before and after workouts and meals so that you know exactly what's going on in your body in real time. And Lumen will give you tips to keep you on top of your health game. Look, I'm not a kid anymore, and my metabolism, well, it's just not as fast as it used to be. So staying healthy and fit, it's much harder. And anything I can do to gain an advantage, well, look, I'm interested. And here's why. First, your metabolism. It's your body's engine. It's how your body turns the food that you eat into fuel that keeps you going for the day. And because your metabolism is at the center of everything that your body does, optimal metabolic health, it translates to a bunch of benefits, including easier weight management, improved energy levels, better fitness results, better sleep, and more. And Lumen, it gives you recommendations to improve your metabolic health. And to the women out there, it'll also help you track your cycle as well as the onset of menopause and adjust your recommendations to keep your metabolism healthy through hormonal shifts so that you too can keep your energy and stave off cravings. So look, take the next step right now to improving your health and go to lumen.me/Cohen to get 20% off your Lumen. That's LUMEN.me/Cohen for 20% off your purchase. And thank you, Lumen, for sponsoring this episode. And this process and these rules, like I was opposed to the release of the Matt Gaetz report. And people were fucking shocked, saying, you of all people, a guy who he attacked me and my family, was spreading fake rumors about me, literally right before I testified before the House Oversight Committee. How could you not want to see the report? Don't get me wrong. I read the report. I wanted to see the report only for the salaciousness of it, the prurient, right, nature of it. But here's the problem with that. When these reports, and I'm going to first start with the Matt Gaetz report, when these reports were first being done, they were done because he was a member of Congress. And when he chose to step away from Congress, it's my position that that report, which is the basis of what the report was created for, was no longer relevant. It was moot. And so to release it, I think is wrong, only because that report was not created for the American people. It was created for other members of Congress to make a determination whether he's fit to remain in Congress. So the second that he stepped away, that, again, report, I believe, was no longer relevant, other than, again, to embarrass for the salacious aspect of it. As it relates, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I get what you're saying, but I'm all for transparency, man. And like, listen, one of the things, it's not just about Matt Gaetz too. It's about the speaker and the people who knew what was in the report that were still willing to support him. So yes, I get, sure, embarrass Matt Gaetz or whatever, but I think it's more than an embarrassment, especially when you're talking about paying minors for sex and stuff like that. I think it's more than embarrassment.
Well,
I mean,
right. So
fucking criminal too. But it also talks
what
about
they should have done.
But also,
right.
Hold on, I think it has something to do also with the lack of action by the Justice Department too. Like it showed that it wasn't like nobody expected Matt Gaetz to be a choir boy. Everybody knew like who he was. That's one of the reasons why he dropped out the damn withdrew his nomination. But I think it's important to acknowledge, hey, why didn't we prosecute this person? Or I think it brings transparency to, hey, Speaker Johnson knew what this was, but he remained silent. So Speaker Johnson protecting other people, like I definitely understand your point, and that's what the report was for. But also at the same time, the American people, American taxpayers, all this stuff, we're responsible for that type of sending those people to do that. And they're doing the work on behalf of the American people. I think we have a right to see it. It wasn't classified. So yeah, but yes, I understand what you're saying and I get it. But I think we had a right to see it though.
So again, when I had said before that there's other things that I agree with Trump on, I believe that the Department of Justice is fucked up. I believe the entire system needs to be completely overhauled and revamped. I'm incredibly disappointed with Merrick Garland as the Attorney General. I think it was possibly the worst move that Joe Biden made in this entire administration. Despite all of the successes that he had, I believe Merrick Garland was the biggest, weakest link in the entire administration. And not because he's not a brilliant man. He should have been a Supreme Court judge, which is what he was supposed to be, instead of Attorney General. He waited too fucking long across the board. I also say Alvin Bragg waited too long in the Manhattan DA case. Look at what we're dealing with now, this political spectacle that, again, I want to go back to the concept of reality. Donald Trump will never see accountability on that. But when you start telling me that the American people have a right to see it, I want to just bring up a point to you, something that, since you mentioned Jamie Raskin has asked for, Dan Goldman has asked for, Congressman Steve Cohen has asked for, Hakeem Jeffries has asked for, Ted Lieu, Senator Dick Durbin has asked for, and countless others. They wanted to see the documents relating to the unconstitutional remand of me, the first political prisoner ever held by this country because I wouldn't waive my First Amendment constitutional rights. It's what my entire book, Revenge, is about. Yet, I am now 4.5+ years into a FOIA request where the judge ruled that I am to be treated with expedited assistance in obtaining these documents. First, they claimed that there were no documents relevant to my request, to my FOIA request. By the way, those documents belong to the American people, not to FOIA, not to government, to the American people. Well, we're more than 4.5 years into it, and I haven't gotten shit, despite the fact they first claimed there were no documents. After I had 4 documents in my possession, somehow I had them, or 5 documents that I must have taken during these congressional hearings. They said, oops, I brought in Mark Zaid, the lawyer. He filed an action. They said, oops, we made a mistake. There's actually 486,000 documents. 486,000, 0 to 486,000. So when they start talking about this one report, right, I'm more concerned about the bigger picture than about a January 6th report, though I want to know who, as members of Congress, may have been involved in the orchestration of this January 6th insurrection. I want to know if Donald himself was involved, which members of his cabinet were involved. I think it's extremely important that we know that. However, again, there's an action pending right now as to whether or not Merrick Garland was even authorized to bring on a special counsel, whether or not Jack Smith was authorized to be the special counsel. If in fact that he was not, if somehow the court rules that he was not, well, to release that document, again, just talking about process and worrying about tomorrow that it doesn't get done to somebody else, I agree that they should not release those documents today. Problem? If in fact that those documents are not released before January 20th, rest assured they will never be released.
Well, that's the problem with the process, man. Like Donald's whole game has been and will ever be delay, delay, delay. And because, I mean, you have people that stormed the Capitol that had served prison time that completed their sentences before they decided if Donald Trump could even be investigated for January 6th. Like, people had already pled guilty, went to court, had their day, sentenced, completed their and back on the streets. And Donald Trump is still determining if he can be held accountable. The system is that's the problem. And the fact that this shit can be gone away and on January 20th in 2 weeks, just goes away, all of it, like it didn't even happen. That's problematic, man. And I think that's where people need to start taking a bigger stand and say, damn, with all this procedural shit, right is right and wrong is wrong.
Well, yes, I agree to some extent. What's right is right, what's wrong is wrong, but it's the process, the procedure. That's technically what the Constitution is, right? It's a process, it's a procedure. What I believe is twofold. One, the Supreme Court in this recent decision of presidential immunity has struck a knife in all of our back regarding accountability. So the only way that we actually ever get accountability is something, Harry, that you do every single day. You talk about it and you go out and you help campaigns, individuals that you believe are like-minded to both you and I. See, we have differences here in terms of the process, whether it should, it shouldn't, but we believe the same thing.
Yeah.
We believe in this country, in democracy, in law. We actually do. Unfortunately, the Supreme Court in that decision basically hit us in the fucking kneecaps with a 9-iron and took us apart, which kind of brings me, and before I get into this question, I want to say to you that when I talk about the future and the danger of opening up a Pandora's box, I want to ask you this. What message do you think that Trump's promise of pardons sends to future extremists? And more importantly, how do you think that it impacts our sense of safety, whether as a police officer or as a citizen?
Yeah, I mean, he's sending a clear message that, like you said earlier when we were talking, he called it a day of love and everybody said no way, but you argued and you made the great point. It was a day of love for him. So the message that it sends is, if you do this stuff in my name, you're forgiven. It's okay. It's acceptable to do again. Donald Trump has not been held accountable for his actions on January 6th. Now there's still some civil suits out there that he's going to have to face, which include members of Congress that are in the suits, Capitol police officers that are in those suits. So there's still a chance for accountability in the civil sense, but criminally he will not. And he'll just make it go away. And that's the thing, that's the message that he's sending. Hey, you know what? Donald forgave us for this. And you know what? There's precedent now. He's setting a precedent that if we storm the Capitol and we do it in his name, that it's okay. He's setting a precedent that in 50, 60 years from now, if this happens, 100 years from now, if some guys do it, they'll cite January 6, 2021 as, hey, it was okay then. And you know what? The Supreme Court agreed that the president could do it as an official act. So it's devastating for American democracy. It's devastating.
You know what else is devastating? It's the slow movement of our Department of Justice, whether it was Merrick Garland in getting this shit started. This is not something that every American has not seen. Not one American has not seen visuals of that specific day.
Yeah.
What the fuck took them so long to get something going on here? Well over a year and a half into this thing. What is there's that old adage, don't trust your lying eyes, trust what I say. Why? We saw what happened. And, with all of that sort of going on and with all of the angst, I forgot to ask you a question about you personally. What do you think has been the most challenging aspect of trying to heal from the trauma of that day. And by the way, your trauma is much greater than that of most Americans that witnessed it in horror, the same way I didn't have to be in the World Trade Center during 9/11 to be traumatized. I lived close to it. I used to work many years ago in the Capitol. So what I really want to know, are there moments right now when it still feels as raw as it did 4 years ago to you?
Not the actual day. Like, I've come to peace with that. Not come to peace, but I've healed from that day. The problem is that the hardest part is having to talk about it every single day for the last 4 years. Like, not even just talk about it, but convince people that it actually fucking happened. That's been the hardest part. Like, people don't acknowledge what we went through is real. People downplaying what we went through. For 4 years, having to convince somebody that me, my coworkers were a victim that day. That's the hardest part. Having to convince somebody that I was a victim and that the victim, the person who attacked or the people who attacked should be held accountable. That's been the hardest part because it's and also at the same time, it's been the most frustrating part, but it's also it helps me determine who to talk to and not. Like, anybody that likes and supports Donald Trump, I don't like him. Like, you could, oh well, Trump is nope, I hate you because it's personal. He's responsible for what happened that day. Period. And if you support him in any capacity, then I hate you because it's personal to me. It's personal to me. This ain't about sending money to Ukraine. This ain't about trans. This ain't about securing the border. It ain't about none tariffs. I don't give a damn about none of that. Well, I do, but on this personal level, you're choosing the person who attacked me and defending him, supporting him, and that's personal to me. So it's made me a lot easier to cut off people, so to speak. But that's been the hardest part.
See, I get what you're saying, having to talk about it over and over and over again. You know, a lot of the talking that we do is, for me, I find it somewhat, well, I was hoping it would be cathartic. It really has not been that. But where I take massive offense, and I really take massive offense, is the amount of testimony that I've had to provide, including both in a civil and the criminal trial. And you get attacked for your participation in those hearings and in those trials, not because you want to be in them, but because you're subpoenaed to be in them. And that all gets completely ignored. But I'll tell you who I'm fucking pissed at. I'm really pissed at Alvin Bragg. I'm pissed about the fact that he took so fucking long. He refused to listen to someone like a Mark Pomerantz, who's a seasoned criminal lawyer, and start the case early, which would have ultimately resulted probably in the same exact decision by these 12 jurors, and that there would be accountability. So people have gotten angry at me when I say, you know what? As a direct result of the wasted time and the delays that Donald Trump is so good at doing, and by the way, I want to say this because I believe in right is right, reality is reality. He has every right within which to appeal decisions, appeal motions, and to delay it. He has every legal right to do that. We needed to have anticipated that. So now, Judge Merchan's decision is that while Donald Trump will still have that conviction, there will be no accountability. It's going to be called an unconditional dismissal, meaning he will never see the inside of a jail cell. He will never be on probation. There will be no change in his life other than he will have that conviction. And I'm opposed to that. I'm opposed to that. I believe holding somebody accountable has to go hand in hand with the charge. You can't call him a felon and then turn around and say, yeah, but despite the fact that 12 jurors came back with 32 counts of guilt, right? 32 charges, he was found guilty on all of them. There's going to be no accountability. 34. That's right.
Yeah.
That there will be no accountability. My position is, if you're not going to hold him accountable, fuck it. Dismiss the whole case. Don't do an unconditional dismissal. Let him have the win, as far as I'm concerned. And people get angry at me and say, no, we want him to be called the felon president. Fuck it. Call him whatever you want to call him. It means nothing to him. It doesn't mean anything to me, and I was the one that was most affected by it.
I was curious when I saw that. I thought about you, and I was wondering how you were handling all this shit. Like, do you plan on
Terribly.
going? Are you going to this? Are you going to go to the sentencing or
no? First of all, he's not even going to be there. It's going to be, but he's going to be there virtually, assuming it even happens. Assuming it even happens. Right now,
it's an appeal right now, right? It's an appeal,
and the decision of the appellate. That's the I think it was the 11th Circuit that he went to. They already they already turned around and said absolutely not, denied. It was like an immediate decision that they had given.
But he went to the Supreme Court. Then it's in appealing to the Supreme Court.
No. It looks like he's going to file a writ of certiorari to the Supreme Court on that decision. But my curiosity is what happens with Judge Merchan. I hate the decision of unconditional dismissal. Either you hold somebody accountable for their actions. I went to prison in part for some of the same crimes that Donald Trump found himself as part of those 34 charges. I'm not the one that had the relationship. I was doing my job, and I did it pretty fucking well, right? The only reason that this thing even became an issue is because he won the election. My point is, if you're not going to hold somebody accountable, then there's absolutely no reason whatsoever, zero, to not dismiss the case in its entirety. Don't do anything half-assed. Do it full.
Yeah, if anybody can speak on the 2 tiers of justice, it's definitely you.
Yeah, well, let me say that it sucks. When your car breaks down, you take it to a mechanic with no hesitation. You need it, and it's not something most guys can fix themselves. I know I can't. And men should think the exact same way about ED. But the reality is, you might be hesitant to seek help. Thankfully, through HIMSS, you can get access to personalized ED treatment without stepping outside the door. HIMSS is changing men's healthcare by providing you with access to affordable sexual health treatments from the comfort of your own couch. HIMSS provides access to a range of doctor-trusted ED treatments like chewable hard mints and Viagra and Cialis and their generics for up to 95% cheaper. You hear that? 95% cheaper. And the process, it's 100% online, so that there's no need for uncomfortable doctor visits. Just answer a series of questions on their site, and a medical provider will determine the right treatment option for you. And if prescribed, your medication ships directly to you for free. No insurance is needed, and one low price covers everything from treatments to ongoing care. And with hundreds of thousands of trusted subscribers, HIMSS can help you find the ED option that works best for you. So start your free online visit today at hims.com/Cohen. That's HIMS.com/Cohen for your personalized ED treatment options. Again, that's hims.com/Cohen. And the product mentioned are chewable compound products which are not approved by or verified by safety or effectiveness by the FDA. Prescriptions require an online consultation with a healthcare provider who will determine if appropriate. Restrictions apply. See website for details and important safety information. Subscription required. Price varies based on product and subscription plan. Hey, I want to ask you on that idea, on that concept. Looking back at that fucking horrific day.
Yeah.
What leadership failures, and exclude Trump from it because we already know that leadership failure. What leadership failure like within the Capitol Police
Yeah,
or other aspects of government stand out most to you? And do you
sure.
think that as a result of you speaking out as prolific as you do, that those failures have been or are currently being adequately addressed?
No, that's a good question. A lot of people have talked about, and even this was the Republicans' um, argument about the cause of January 6th was the security failures of that day. And sure, there were clearly security failures that day. Um, I want to make it clear though, if I leave my door unlocked and somebody breaks it, comes in my house and steals all my shit, I'm not gonna. Yes, I'll blame myself a little, but the blame still goes with the person who broke in the damn house.
It's still breaking and entering. You
Correct.
don't have to
So
break the lock or
I'll
window. Yeah.
correct. I'll start by saying that. But to say there's definitely was a failure somewhere in the intelligence gathering of this. We learned that through the January 6th committee. Information was being shared, but it wasn't being shared with everybody, or this person got this, and people were talking about the optics of the National Guard being there, and a lot of people dropped the ball. And I've heard a lot of people's different accounts of what happened that day. I'm not privy to those conversations. I'm privy to what people say on the news. So when it comes to that, the planning and the intelligence, the information that I have is what people relay on the news. But it's clear somebody fucked up with the intelligence. Somebody fucked up with denying the National Guard and all this type of stuff. It definitely happened. Um, with that being said, with when January 6th just passed, I was actually in DC. I saw they had the fences up. It wasn't just a bike rack, and it wasn't just a few extra officers brought in. I mean, I saw NYPD cruisers there, which Capitol Police has started transfer to with mutual aid. People have come as far as New York. I remember during inauguration or a State of the Union, we had Chicago PD and all the Maryland State Police, Virginia State Police. Just you have a lot of other assets on the ground, and you prepare what they appear to have been preparing for the absolute worst case scenario, instead of adjusting on the fly, kind of like we did on January 6th. So I do believe those failures or issues have been addressed. I'm no longer with the department, so I can't say for certain. But based on what some of the things that the officers that are still there have told me, then yeah, they have been addressed. But yes, let's be clear. Somebody definitely dropped the ball. And I've heard it's been this person, it's been that. I don't know. I don't know. But I will say
Who do you
this.
think it is?
I see. I don't know. I don't know how how those decisions are made. I don't know how it works. I don't know. So that's one thing I won't speculate on that because I don't know. I will say somebody effed it up. And I don't care if it was Nancy Pelosi, if it was the Sergeant at Arms of the House or Sergeant at Arms of the Senate, or if it was the Chief of Capitol Police. If it was any of those people, hold them accountable. Hold them accountable. Even if it was Nancy, I love Nancy Pelosi. But if she was responsible for the failures of that day, she needs to be held accountable, period. Just like Donald Trump needs to be held accountable. I don't believe that Nancy Pelosi was. I mean, she's been out there speaking. I don't believe it. But I do know that the people at the Capitol that day were there beating the hell out of us, and they did not leave, and they breached the Capitol, and they told us they were there to stop the steal, and that they were there because Donald Trump told them to be there, period.
And I'll tell you what, one of the things that really pisses me off the most is while there was 1,000 individuals who, whether they were incarcerated or just charged between trespassing or violence upon Capitol Police officers and so on, not one member of Congress, not one person from the inside that worked there at the Capitol had been held accountable. It kind of reminds me of like the great mortgage debacle where there was like $1 trillion lost in the system, but not one person from the bank ended up being held accountable. It's why I say, and I agree with Trump on this, and I hate the fact that I'm agreeing so much, with some of the things that he's saying. I don't agree with with the message that he says, but I agree with the overall theme. Our Justice Department needs a total makeover. It needs I hate to say it, it needs to be burnt down to the ground and rebuilt. When you're able to have a prosecutor, as I did in my cases, who has all the power, and then they turn around and the only way they get you to capitulate is they tell you that if you don't plead guilty in 48 hours, which is what they did to me, we're filing an 80-page indictment that's going to include your wife. All right? That shit should never happen. That's not justice. All right?
You and Donald Trump are calling for a remake of the Justice Department for two different reasons.
Yes, we are.
Donald Trump is calling for it because they are actually investigating him and treating him like nobody's above the law, like they should. I would call for remake of the Justice Department because of the way that it's how slow that it is. That justice, like, it's right to a speedy trial shouldn't just extend to the damn defendants. It should extend to the people aggrieved too. Like, how long do we have to live this shit? You know. So you and Donald Trump want, and shit, all three of us want a revamp, but it's for different damn priorities.
Yep, you're 100% correct. You know, I'll tell you another big issue that we really have to start to examine as the Democratic Party is social media. Because, and then to tie social media into this scenario, 4 years later, you believe that the role of social media in fueling political extremism has been addressed at all? Forget about if I ask you, has it been adequately addressed or does it remain still a threat? It is a threat to America's democracy. What do you think we need to do here, pal?
Man, I just saw the report where they're going to stop fact checking on Mark Zuckerberg. Jesus Christ, man! Like, I love this fact that this independent news, like that we're doing now. This talk show that you're doing here with the Midas Touch and all these individuals supporting independent media. You know, I got so frustrated a lot of times with mainstream media not covering the crap that they treated Donald, what he was doing as normal. And they demonized that. This is during the campaign thing. Any move that Kamala Harris made or Joe Biden made, it was crazy. And now they're just looking for ways to justify. I don't know how we do it, man. But my biggest thing is do something. We can't be silent. I appreciate you having me on the show, bringing real life people that are going to keep it real and talk about the issues that need to be talked about. I'm glad that you haven't given up in your fight 4 years late or 6 years later, still fighting for your fight, man. Like, people want to move on from stuff, but yourself, me, we're not moving on until whatever's been wrong is corrected.
There needs to be resolution.
Then we can move on.
Yeah. There needs to be resolution, and there isn't. In fact, I'm still hopeful that Joe Biden is going to offer me a pardon to the same extent he offered his son a pardon. You know, after everything that I have been through, and now with the threats or the potential threats of Trump coming after people who he deems to be critics. Well, yes, am I critical of him? Yeah, where he needs to be critically analyzed. I'm not saying every single thing. I have already mentioned 2 things that I agree with him on, right? Borders and the Justice Department and so on. But yes, while we have the same, we'll call it on a macro level, we agree that immigration is a problem, our justice system is broken. Yeah. The micro level, the aspects of it are completely different, as you pointed out. Now, Harry, as the hour comes to an end, right? And I can't believe it. You know, it goes by too quick because I can ask you questions all night long.
Yeah.
After everything that you've endured, and I'm going to try to use your answer to sort of help myself a little bit, because I'm in a terrible emotional place and I live in a terrible emotional place. And I don't have the answer to it, which is why I'm asking you as a friend. What gives you hope that America can move forward from January 6th and other scenarios and become stronger as a democracy?
Mike, I'll tell you this, and a lot of people ask me, what keeps me going or what motivates me, and you know what? It's just doing what's right and being able to live with myself is what motivates me. I care about what my obituary is going to read when I'm no longer here. I care what my legacy will be. People will say, Harry Dunn, he did what was right. He stood up for what he believed in. And I'm willing to stand up for what I believe in, even if it's me versus 10 million people. I'm willing to stand on that. I don't go along with trends and this and that. And I try to be understanding, but I believe in doing right and stand. Listen, like a lot of people have felt defeated after this last election. Like, okay, what can we do? Like, I don't know. Think about this. If every time things look bleak or grim, people just stopped fighting, slavery would still be legal, women still wouldn't have the right to vote. All these things, they would still exist. But we have to keep fighting, we have to keep putting pressure, and we have to believe that there's enough people, even though they didn't show up this election. Yeah, but there is there's midterms in 2026. Do we just concede that? Or do we fight even harder to try to win? Now, we have to be realistic. We're not going to get a Roe v. Wade back codified during this Congress, during this presidency. We're not. We're not going to get all the things that Joe Biden was fighting for and the Democrats were fighting. We're not going to get those things. We're treading water right now. So we have to continue to tread and not drown and realize that 2026, there's an opportunity, there's a boat coming by, and let's try to get on this boat and take control of it. Just keep on our eyes looking towards the future, I guess, is what gives me hope that, what's already been horrible, how much worse can it get? So,
as they say, eye on the prize, right, pal?
That's it, buddy.
Eye on the prize. Well, Harry, thank you for joining me as always. Appreciate you. Appreciate your strength, both physical and mental. So you keep being Harry. We're going to be seeing each other on the trail because, yeah, you're
Definitely.
right. 2026 is going to be extremely important.
Definitely, my friend.
Thank you, my brother.
Take care, buddy.